They stoned a homeless Apache woman in the street, calling her a monster, until a cowboy took her home. The sun was low in the sky, casting long, golden shadows across the dusty streets of the small southwestern town. The wind whispered through empty alleys, carrying with it the faint smell of sage and dry earth. On one corner, sitting on the cracked pavement, was an old woman. Her clothes were ragged and worn, the fabric faded from years of sun and weather. Her face was lined with age and hardship, and her dark eyes held a sadness that seemed to reach back decades. This was Naomi, an Apache woman who had lived a life full of struggle, displacement, and the quiet pain of being ignored by the world. She moved slowly, her bare feet brushing against the warm stones of the street. Naomi had learned to avoid attention, to keep to the shadows, and to make herself as small as possible. But today, even the shadows could not protect her. A few townspeople had noticed her sitting there. Their whispers started low, almost hesitant at first, but quickly grew louder. "Look at her. She's a monster." The whispers turned to laughter, cruel and sharp, echoing off the buildings. Some of the younger men started tossing small stones toward her, aiming to scare her. Naomi raised her arms instinctively, trying to protect herself. The stones bounced harmlessly off the pavement around her, but the act was enough to make her heart race. Each throw reminded her of all the times she had been pushed away, mocked, and misunderstood. She looked down at the ground, ashamed that she had to cower like a child, even though it was not her fault. People gathered, some simply watching, others adding to the cruelty. Naomi's breaths came in short, shallow bursts. She could feel the fear creeping in, a cold shadow running through her chest. Her legs trembled and her fingers dug into the rough pavement to hold herself steady. She wanted to disappear, to vanish from the world entirely, but there was no magic for that. From a distance, a man noticed the scene. Jack, a rugged cowboy with a worn hat and a calm, steady presence, was riding slowly along the edge of town. He had been tending to his horse and supplies, moving through the streets with the quiet ease of someone who had spent years in open fields and small towns. Jack saw Naomi immediately. Something in the way she huddled on the ground, trying to make herself smaller, tugged at his heart. He saw the group surrounding her, heard their harsh words and the laughter that felt crueler than the stones they threw. His eyes narrowed, not in anger but in focus. He didn't hesitate. He dismounted quickly, the leather of his boots hitting the dusty street with a soft thud. His long coat swished as he moved forward, his steps deliberate and confident. "Hey," Jack shouted, his voice strong and steady. "Leave her alone." One of the young men tried to step closer, but Jack moved forward, not with threat but with calm determination. He didn't need a weapon, his presence was enough. He stood beside Naomi, a protective figure in the middle of the street. Naomi looked up at him, unsure of who he was or if she could trust him. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and disbelief. No one had ever stepped in like this before. "Go on now," Jack said to the crowd. "There's no reason to hurt anyone here. She's not your enemy." Naomi stayed where she was, trembling, her eyes fixed on the man who had just saved her. Jack crouched down to her level, keeping a respectful distance. He did not ask her questions or demand answers. He simply extended a hand. "Come with me," he said gently. "I have a place where you'll be safe." Years of rejection had taught her that kindness often had a hidden cost, that offers of help could turn into more pain. But something in Jack's calm voice, in the way his eyes met hers without judgment, made her pause. Slowly, almost cautiously, she took his hand. They walked together out of the town, leaving behind the empty streets, the whispers, and the fear. Naomi clung to Jack's hand, not because she knew him, but because she had no other choice. The world had been cruel to her, but maybe, just maybe, it had a small corner where she could find a sliver of hope. The path to Jack's ranch was long, winding through dusty plains and open fields. Naomi walked slowly, feeling the sun warm her back, listening to the soft sound of Jack's boots crunching against the gravel. He spoke little, only guiding her gently when she stumbled or when the terrain grew rough. Naomi had not walked like this in years, not with someone who seemed to care. By the time they arrived at the ranch, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The ranch was simple, a modest homestead with a small wooden house and a few outbuildings. Horses grazed quietly in the distance, and the air smelled of earth, hay, and something that felt safe. Jack led Naomi inside and offered her a seat by the fire. He brought water in a cup and handed it to her. Naomi took it with shaking hands, unsure how to respond. She had gone so long without care, without kindness, that it almost felt foreign. Jack said nothing, only waited patiently, letting her adjust to the warmth and safety of the room. For the first time that day, Naomi allowed herself to breathe without flinching. She looked around at the simple furnishings, the cozy fire, and the quiet presence of the man who had intervened. It was a stark contrast to the fear-filled streets she had left behind. Here, there was no judgment, no cruelty. Here, she could exist simply as she was. Jack moved about the room quietly, tending to small chores, giving Naomi space. When he spoke, it was gentle, encouraging, and kind. "You can rest here tonight," he said. "No one will harm you here. You'll be safe." She realized that not all people were cruel, that sometimes the world offered small acts of courage and kindness that could change everything. As the night fell and the stars began to twinkle above the quiet plains, Naomi sat by the fire, feeling the warmth seep into her tired bones. She did not speak much, but her silence was not one of fear anymore. It was one of reflection, of slowly letting herself hope. Jack watched her from a distance, quietly satisfied that she was safe, that he had been able to intervene before harm came to her. He understood that the world had been hard on her, but he also knew that small acts could make a difference. Tonight at least she would sleep without fear. Tonight she had a place to belong, even if just for a little while. And for Naomi, the old Apache woman who had been called a monster, the world suddenly felt a little less lonely, a little less cruel, and a little more possible. The next morning, Naomi woke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the small window of the ranch house. The warmth of the fire from the night before had faded, but the room still smelled faintly of hay, wood, and fresh air. She blinked a few times, still adjusting to the idea that she was inside a safe place, rather than alone on the streets. For the first time in many years, she did not feel the weight of fear pressing down on her chest. Jack had already risen. He was quietly feeding the horses in the small stable behind the house. The soft sounds of hooves on the straw and the gentle whinnies of the animals brought a sense of calm that Naomi had not felt in a long time. She dressed in the simple, clean clothes Jack had provided and stepped outside, letting the cool morning air wash over her. Jack noticed her and nodded with a small, encouraging smile. "Morning, Naomi. Want to help with the horses today?" he asked. His voice was calm, patient, and without any expectation. He understood that trust took time and he was willing to wait. Naomi hesitated, then nodded. She had never handled horses before, but something in her wanted to try. She walked slowly toward the stable, her hands brushing the soft coats of the animals. At first she was nervous. The horses were large, strong, and unfamiliar, but Jack guided her gently, showing her how to stroke them calmly and offer them food. Naomi felt a strange sense of connection with the creatures, as if they understood her without words. Over the next few hours, Naomi and Jack worked together around the ranch. She swept the floor of the stable, filled water troughs, and helped Jack gather firewood. With every small task, Naomi felt a little more at ease, a little more part of the world again. She realized that even though she had been rejected by many people, there were moments like this, moments of quiet kindness and purpose, that could slowly heal the heart. During a break, Naomi sat on a wooden bench outside the house, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. Jack joined her with a cup of water. He didn't rush to fill the silence with words. Instead, he let her sit quietly, knowing that peace could sometimes be more comforting than conversation. After a few minutes, Naomi spoke softly. I used to live on land like this long ago. But everything changed. People, they didn't want me there. They made me feel like I didn't belong anywhere. Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued, "I lost my family, I lost my home, I lost myself. No one should have to feel that way. You didn't deserve what happened to you." Days turned into weeks, and Naomi slowly adapted to life on the ranch. She helped Jack with the chores, learning how to tend the animals, care for the garden, and keep the small house in order. Each day, she gained a sense of accomplishment and purpose that had been absent from her life for so long. Jack, in turn, learned more about Naomi. She shared stories of her childhood, her Apache heritage, and the traditions that had been forced to fade over the years. She spoke of the dances, the songs, and the wisdom of her elders. Jack listened with quiet respect, fascinated by the richness of her experiences and the resilience she had shown despite so much loss. One afternoon, Naomi and Jack were working in the garden. Naomi was planting seeds for vegetables while Jack tended to a small patch of flowers. The sun was warm on their backs, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of earth and growing plants. Naomi paused, wiping her hands on her apron. "I never thought I could feel hope again," she said softly. "I thought the world had nothing for me. But now, I feel like maybe there's a place for me after all." She often stood on the hills overlooking the open fields, feeling the sun on her face and the wind in her hair. These moments of solitude gave her time to reflect, to remember who she was, and to start imagining who she could become. The animals, too, seemed to respond to her presence. The horses grew calm when she approached, the chickens followed her with curiosity, and even the shy dog at the edge of the ranch wagged its tail when she came near. Naomi felt a quiet joy in caring for these creatures, realizing that nurturing life around her also helped her nurture life within herself. One evening, after a long day of work, Naomi and Jack sat by the fire outside the house. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, and the first stars began to twinkle above. Naomi held a small cup of tea, savoring the warmth and the peace of the moment. I never thought I could feel safe again," she said quietly. "Even now, it's hard to believe, but being here with you, with the animals, it feels like I belong somewhere." "You do belong here, Naomi. And not just here, but anywhere you choose. The world may not always be kind, but you've earned a place where you can stand tall without fear." Jack had not just given her shelter, he had given her a sense of dignity, a reminder that she mattered. Over the next few months, Naomi's confidence grew. She began to speak more freely, sharing her thoughts and opinions. She laughed, sometimes softly, sometimes with abandon, discovering a joy that she had thought was lost forever. She tended the garden with care, watched over the animals, and even helped Jack with tasks that required strength and skill. Each day brought small victories, and each small victory reminded her that life could be gentle and good. Jack and Naomi formed a quiet bond, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. They did not need to speak constantly to feel connected. Sometimes, a simple glance or a shared smile was enough to communicate understanding. Naomi learned that relationships could be nurturing and steady, not always complicated or painful. One bright morning, Naomi climbed to the top of a small hill near the ranch. The wind blew across the plains, and she felt the sun warming her face. For the first time in many years, she felt truly free. She was no longer the woman cowering on the streets, called a monster by strangers. She was Naomi, the Apache woman who had survived, who had endured, and who had found a place where she could live with dignity and peace. Jack watched her from a distance, leaning against the fence. He knew that he had not done anything extraordinary. He had simply offered kindness, patience, and a safe space. And yet, he also understood that these small acts could change a life. Naomi's transformation was a reminder that even in a world that could be harsh and unkind, hope, compassion, and courage could make a lasting difference. As the sun rose higher in the sky, Naomi turned and looked back at the ranch house. A gentle smile spread across her face. She had a home now, a place to belong, and a life filled with purpose and peace. And she knew that no matter what the world might throw at her in the future, she would face it with strength, courage, and the quiet knowledge that she was no longer alone. In the heart of the plains, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the steady presence of a kind soul, Naomi finally felt whole. And in that moment, the world seemed just a little bright.